I'm the artistic director of a company in Suffolk, very sunny Suffolk, called Unit. And at Unit, we believe that everybody should be dancing every day, which I pretty much think is the foundation of any kind of community dance practice. But we believe it more than anything, and we try and tell people that as much as possible. I'm here today because about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was invited by People Dancing to put a bit of a blog together to kind of talk about a little workshop that I've been building called Dance, Digital and Participation, and just to reflect some thoughts about it that might be helpful to you, to spark off some ideas for some practice, or maybe it might be nice just to listen to a man ramble on about dance and digital for a little bit. I have had a 4-year experience with dance and digital and participation work. It started with Dance East with some live streaming into primary schools. It has gone on to be a Quest Lab artist with Studio Wayne McGregor, where we've learned about the philosophies and histories and breadth of digital projects that are out there, all the way into producing, creating and funding for work like that. So I had a really rich and dense experience there. And then I've gone on to work with another organisation called Suffolk Art Link, who are now really exploring digital processes in quite vulnerable settings with some very advanced tools. Across all of these programmes, I have been building my thoughts and feelings towards digital. And I think I just have a few quickly to say. First of all, I love tech and I'm quite gadgety, but I'm not very technical. My brain does not allow me to be as thorough as I need to be to keep up with everything. It hops around a little bit too much. So I really allow the detail of those places to be supported by brilliant technical friends that I have. The next one that I want to say is that digital work, although can feel really alien to people, especially in a really human art form like dance. And I just want to remind you that actually anything digital has been made by a human at some point to be helpful, to be supportive, to add something to something that we didn't have. So remind yourself when you're holding a camera that's frustrating you, that a granny or a mum or an uncle or an auntie had made that and really wanted their human experience of how they made it to be helpful to you. And if you can see the humanity in the digital product, then you can think, well, actually, I can make this work. I guess the last thought I had is that sometimes I felt digital things could be a little bit like a bit of a gimmick to use. And I felt quite frustrated about that, like, well, why have I got to put this into my practice? My practice is fine. It's good enough as it is. And actually, I discovered that there were a few really key projects that totally turned my thinking around. So firstly, we're looking at Rebecca Pell of the Pell Ensemble, and her practice really focused on using coding and dance together to explain one another and to find an easier way in, which felt really new and different to me. The next one was Katie Dale Everett, as more recent project, where she started to explore VR and empathy and about the ideas of touch and connection whilst in a VR environment. And then the last example I wanted to say was with John Darvell of Nocturne Dance. He had really used Facebook as a structure and a tool to communicate a story, using a number of films and narratives throughout the posts to create something quite new. And I've always wondered how this might work in a community instance. So just to say, I 4 weeks ago put out a tweet and a Facebook message just to say, is anybody in my sector really interested in listening to me talk about dance, digital and participation? And I had something like 400 comments and 27 shares to say, yes, we are. So I put together a talk, which I have led 6 times now, and I'm creating a video that people can get from me. I've spoken to over 180 community artists, all about the topics of dance and digital and participation. And I thought that I would just kind of précis some of that talk for you here, so you can get an idea for yourself and maybe think about how your practice might fit in some of these places. So the first one, just to say, is that the digital world has a really key dialogue of improving itself through creating a better human experience, and particularly using the five senses of a human to be able to make a better experience. So if something has been largely visual, adding sound to it can really enhance the five senses. By adding something that includes touch, like holding something with sound and vision, can increase it again, and so on and so forth. And we've been really finding that the more human the way that the sense is enlivened in the digital sense, the more connection is brought about by it, and the more the sense of enjoyment or engagement with it happens. So I wondered about how I could put the five senses over my dance practice. Now, we could argue that the five senses are there all the time, they're all present, it's a very human experience, and that's there, and that's fine. But I kind of thought, if I was really detailed, how would I put the five senses into my practice and then maybe see that in the digital world? So I took the sense of touch and I took the sense of sound particularly. Touch is really important because I use a lot of contact improvisation and a lot of improvisation, a lot of lifting work to be able to really create the movement that I use to work with people, and sound because I either really use music or my verbal instructions to create rich imaginative worlds to let people create their own movement. And I thought, if I overlaid those into the digital world, how could I do it? Now I'm going to do the easy one for you, sound. I thought, actually, I think I could use things like podcasts, or I could use soundtracks, or I could really enhance the quality of my vocal instruction in digital world by buying a microphone to make sure that the sound was really kicking off as an enlivened sense. Instead of just thinking, oh, I'm just going to put my class online. You know, I kind of thought first, what senses do I use and what tools are out there for it? I thought about touch quite a lot. I tried to think about how could I get touch in a digital way if it was missing now. And actually, I found that it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So in fact, what was missing in digital touch, I had to ramp up when I was delivering things. So I would really make sure that I engage people through massage, a lot of self-touch, touching of others, touching of the space around us to kind of acclimatise ourselves, but also just to have a real rich, grounded experience of knowing exactly where we are before we move. Just to say, there is digital touch, I discovered. There is digital touch through like haptic feedback, the buzzing on your telephone. There is also digital touch through heart rate monitors or breathing monitors or pedometers, sleep monitors, blood glucose, all of these things from body to body kind of connect us in a digital sense. So it wasn't, impossible to have a sense of digital touch, but actually I needed to put something out quite quickly in a response to this kind of COVID landscape. So I kind of left that a little bit behind. One of the other things I thought about though was there were the five senses, but there was also the sixth sense. The sixth sense for me is a bit of a bread and butter of a community artist. So the sixth sense is about connection. It's about understanding when somebody walks past you that they're not feeling so great today, or they are feeling great and they could do with more lifting or grounding, something. And how do you experience that in a digital way? I really looked for quite a lot of research to find what builds human connection, and came up with answers like listening, empathy, a space for vulnerability. And once I had those ideas, I thought, actually, how do I make sure that they are embedded in my digital program or offer of what I'm doing? If they're not there, then human connection can't be there. So I've got to put them together in some sense. Once they were, I discovered that the awkwardness that people were having, I feel disconnected, was beginning to go, and the humanity of the five senses were beginning to really come forwards.